Test J, Section 3, Question 9, Naturalist. The recent claims that the Tasmanian tiger is not extinct are false. Okay, so some people are saying that the Tasmanian tiger is still around. It's not extinct. But this naturalist is saying that those claims are false, so the naturalist must actually think that the Tasmanian tiger is extinct. I think it's helpful to take a half second and make sure you're understanding what's saying. Otherwise, you're going to have a double negative and maybe get twisted around. But the point is, the naturalist thinks the tiger is extinct. It doesn't exist anymore. Okay, why? That's probably the conclusion. Why is it extinct? The Tasmanian tiger's natural habitat was taken over by sheep farming decades ago. Okay, resulting in the animal's systematic elimination from the area. Okay, if you systematically eliminate an animal from an area, does that mean that the animal is now extinct? Well, yes, if that's the only place that the animal exists, although if the animal is in one zoo anywhere, it's not extinct. Okay, cool. So I like this evidence, but I'd like it to go further. From the world would have been great. Well, even then you'd have to say, but did someone put a Tasmanian tiger in a Falcon 9 rocket and shoot it into space? Because then, it might not be in the world, but still existing. So anyways, universe, that could work. Metaverse. Anyways, since the naturalists working in the region have discovered no hard evidence of its survival, well, the Tasmanian tiger is probably smart enough to avoid these naturalists, but whatever. Such as carcasses or tracks, maybe they're really savvy. I don't know. That's not the greatest evidence. I don't care that people haven't discovered it. It could still exist. In spite of alleged sightings of the animal, the Tasmanian tiger no longer exists. Whoa. So some people have supposedly seen it, and this person is not addressing that. Instead, they're just dismissing it. They're just like, but let me repeat my conclusion. The Tasmanian tiger is extinct. This argument sucks. The tiger might be somewhere else. I don't know. It sounds like it's a goner, but it could still exist. And that's the standard. When someone asserts a conclusion, they have to prove that conclusion. They can't just provide some even good evidence. They've got to provide proving evidence, right? And they haven't proven their conclusion here. So that's my issue with this argument, right? Jeez Louise. Keep touching my desk controls. Okay, anyways, question 9 says, which one of the following is an assumption on which the naturalist argument depends? Okay, so the last question we did was a sufficient assumption question. This, on the other hand, is a necessary assumption question. So it's a very different question. Instead of asking what assumption, if true, proves the conclusion, I'm now just going to ask what assumption is required. Without it, the argument is not going to work. What is an assumption that the author has to agree with? It may not be enough to prove the conclusion, but it's something that the naturalist has to agree with. One thought here is that the naturalist has to agree that the Tasmanian tiger is nowhere else in the universe. Okay? A, sheep farming drove the last Tasmanian tigers to starvation by chasing them from their natural habitat. The naturalist does not have to agree with this because maybe they died from some other means, not necessarily starvation. So no, this is not something that the naturalist has to agree with. The naturalist could disagree and still think that the tigers are extinct. B, some scavengers in Tasmania are capable of destroying tiger carcasses without a trace. That is definitely not something that the naturalist has to agree with. This would undercut the naturalist's argument. It would suggest, hey, maybe they do exist, but we just can't find them because the scavengers are very clean. They watch CSI or something like that. Anyways, answer choice C, every naturalist working in the Tasmanian tiger's natural habitat has looked systematically for evidence of the tiger's survival. No, the naturalist does not have to agree or believe that every single naturalist has been looking systematically. Maybe there was one lazy Joe Schmo who did nothing. That still doesn't, the naturalist doesn't depend on every single one of them doing their job perfectly. So that's out. D, the Tasmanian tiger did not move and adapt to a different region in response to the loss of habitat. Yes, the naturalist has to agree with this claim. If the naturalist does not believe this, then the naturalist would actually believe that the Tasmanian tiger did move and adapt to a different region. And that would totally undercut his or her argument. So the argument has to assume this. The naturalist has to agree with D. So that's the answer. E, those who have reported sightings of the Tasmanian tiger are not experienced naturalists. The naturalist might believe that, but the naturalist doesn't have to believe that. The naturalist could say, yeah, they're experienced, they just don't know what they're talking about. They got confused. It was too far off in the distance. The tiger doesn't exist. So E is probably tempting, but doesn't have to be true. Questions? Camilla.
So is this the one that's the same as a necessary or sufficient, you said?
This is a necessary assumption question, and the way we know that is from the word depends. It's looking for an assumption that the argument depends on or needs.
Is this similar to questions that say like something that like is taken for granted or something?
Yes. When you see that in answer choices, takes for granted or presumes without providing justification means necessarily assumes. Okay, good. Any other questions on this question? Alrighty.